A reading from the book of Seraphic. Let us praise these men of renown, our ancestors, each in his own time. These were godly men, whose virtues have not been forgotten. Their wealth remains in their families, their heritage with their descendants. Through God's covenant with them, their family endures, their posterity for their sake. And for all time their progeny will endure. Their glory will never be blotted out. Their bodies are peacefully laid away, but their name lives on and on. At gatherings their wisdom is retold, and the assembly proclaims their praise. Verbum Domini.
Who shall climb the mountain of the Lord? Who shall stand in his holy place? The man with clean hands and pure heart, who desires not worthless things. Lord, this the people that longs to see your face. He shall receive a blessing from the Lord, and a reward from the God who saves him. Such are the men who seek him, who seek the face of the God of Jacob. Lord, this the people that longs to see your face. This is the true brotherhood which overcomes the strife of the world. They followed the Lord and attained the heavenly kingdom. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia.
Dominus vobiscum.
Et cum spiritu tuo.
Lectio Sancti Evangelii secundum Marcum. As Jesus was setting out on a journey, a man came running up, knelt down before him, and asked, "Good teacher, "What must I do to share in everlasting life?" Jesus answered, "Why do you call me good? No one is good but God alone. You know the commandments. You shall not kill. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness. You shall not defraud. Honor your father and your mother." He replied, "Teacher, I have kept all these since my childhood." Then Jesus looked at him with love and told him, "There is one thing more you must do. Go and sell what you have and give to the poor. You will then have treasure in heaven. After that, come and follow me." Verbum Domini. Today is a feast for Franciscans. It's the celebration of All Saints' Day within the Franciscan orders. We have All Saints' Day for the whole church on November 1st, but then each of the religious orders also celebrates its own All Saints' Day. Jesuits do it in November 5th. And Franciscans celebrate it today. And this is called the All Saints of the Seraphic Order because it includes all the different Franciscan communities. You know, there are three things that only God knows. One of them is how much money the Catholic Church really has. One of them is how many orders of Franciscans there are, really. Third one is what really is on a Jesuit's mind. But, you know, with all there are hundreds of Franciscan communities because since the 13th century, St. Francis has inspired Catholics around the world to begin communities that are following his rule. And one of the things, or some of the things that especially characterize what it means to be a Franciscan is, first of all, following the gospel of Jesus Christ. This is one of the things that the rule of St. Francis starts with, and that he himself did in his own day. You know, one of the situations of the 13th century is that it was a time of growing prosperity in Christianity. There was such an influx of trade going on with the Far East through the Arabs. After the Crusades, there were trade relationships with the Arabs that were mutually beneficial to Europe and them. And silks all the way from China, and spices from India and other parts of Asia were flowing back and forth. And this made Europe very wealthy, and compared to the centuries prior. Europe had gone through those barbarian invasions, and this new wealth gave a new influx, not only of clothing and spices and flavors, but also universities were starting at the same time. And there was a great flourishing. But this was also a mixed bag, because with that wealth, some Christians were going through the motions of being Christian, but they were really focusing their attention on getting this new wealth. Cities were growing and flourishing all over Europe. and that these new cities were oftentimes independent, and people who wanted to be independent and creative ran away from the farms where they were serfs, and they would hide in the cities and gain new identities and new opportunities. But their Christianity became something that was merely external. St. Francis, as he recovered from illness, also began to read the gospel. Again, he benefited from this, not only by the wealth of his father, but also by having the ability to read, because the church really was concerned that people would become educated. And as much education as could be gotten out was done by the church. So he was able to read, and as he read the gospel, he became inspired by it. And people would hear the gospel read at Mass on Sunday, but oftentimes that was in Latin, and they didn't always understand. So the gospel was making less impact on the way Christians were living. St. Francis took the gospel and was filled with these passages of what Jesus did and a love of Jesus whom he met in the gospel. And he began to live it radically. And others responded. The Holy Spirit was working in him and among so many others, so that followers came to be inspired by the gospel. And this is going to be the core of Franciscan spirituality, but also the spirituality of the whole church. We need to learn. It's one of the reasons why the friars through the centuries have been so much beloved within the church. They call us to that same gospel inspiration and to read the life of Christ in the Gospels and to allow Christ to transform our way of looking, that we look at everything around us. And in our society, we have far more wealth. Even our poor are oftentimes wealthier than the middle class of the time of Francis. And we need to have the gospel, like today's reading from Mark chapter 10, to help us put this tremendous wealth into the perspective of Jesus Christ and to see everything through his eyes and to see everything as related to him. He becomes the center. He is the focus. And we judge how we use possessions in line with how it serves Jesus Christ. We put our ideas in relationship to Jesus Christ. We put our desires in relationship to Jesus Christ, and from him we gain perspective. And when St. Francis gained that perspective on his own life, he was able to call others to do the same in their lives. He didn't just have the theory, he lived it out. And as he lived it out, others came to live it out with him and have continued to do so through the centuries, especially as he focused on living out the gospel of Jesus Christ in poverty, in obedience, and in chastity. And that these vows characterize the way that the Franciscan community lives the gospel out, with a strong focus in their tradition on poverty, and that the simplicity of life is what helps them to become free to minister. And one of the things that the Franciscans did is they didn't just rail against all the new developments going on in their world in the 13th century. They didn't just say, this is all evil and we reject it all. That was not their approach. Oh, there were some branches that split off and did their own thing and tried that and said it was the end of the world. But those didn't last. They died out. The Franciscans used their spirituality to go and evangelize these new cities, to go to the universities, so that among the saints are St. Bonaventure, who's a doctor of the church, Blessed John Duns Scotus, and many others over the centuries who used that new institution of the university to learn much and bring a Franciscan perspective to the learning of the day and help educate others in that vision of the gospel. From that, we also must learn, as Pope Benedict is calling for next year in the year of faith, that we take our new situations in the culture. We do the same thing the Franciscans did. We put our society in perspective. And we use the perspective of the gospel to judge our society. That doesn't mean that we reject everything that exists out there. It's rather that we take that perspective of Jesus Christ as the center, which puts everything relative to him. And we can use the new situations. How many people already are using the new media? As a matter of fact, the fact that we are here is because Mother Angelica used the mass media, using a Franciscan perspective to use this mass medium of television and then radio, and to help bring the gospel to so many people. But then there are these new media coming along on the internet and Twitter and all these other things. And we're using that, but it's not only EWTN that gets to use it. Individual Christians are entering into that world, bringing the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that perspective. And we need to learn from those early Franciscans who evangelized their new developing civilization with the tools that they had, and do the same in our own lives. But like them, we must have the living out of the gospel as core to us. We must follow our vocations, and follow our vocations within the light of the gospel of Christ, and use him to judge our lives over and over again, and to judge the things around us over and over again, to reject what is contrary to the gospel, and to have a sense of being willing to leave everything, as he calls this rich young man in today's gospel, to leave everything behind and follow him into the society. In this way, we can also do what Blessed John Paul the Great had told us when he began the Jubilee of 2000, to set out into the deep, cast our nets, and bring in a great harvest, bring in many souls. This has been the goal of all these saints and blessed, the canonized and the uncanonized, Franciscan, fathers, brothers, sisters, third order laity, and all that rich variety that they have of Capuchins and conventuals and third order, and just all the different kinds of Franciscan communities. I was taught by the Franciscan Sisters of Our Lady of Lourdes, another one of those little branches. And all of these people were raised up and inspired by Francis to evangelize society. Let us learn from them, follow their example, do the same, and bring in a rich harvest of many souls to Christ.